I'm your host, Sabrina Salvati. I'm your host, Sabrina Salvati. I'm your host, Sabrina Salvati. All right. Welcome, everyone. Happy Tuesday. Welcome to Sabby Sabs podcast. I'm your host, Sabrina Salvati. I have a special guest with me tonight. His name is Larry Sharpe. He is a gubernatorial candidate in North. I don't know what happened to Larry. I lost him. Hold on. Let's see. Oh, no. I lost him. Oh, there he is. Okay, there he is. All right, here we go. My special guest tonight is Larry Sharpe. He is a gubernatorial candidate in New York, and he is running through the Libertarian Party. So, Larry, thank you so much for coming on.
I am happy to be here. I appreciate you having me on.
So, you have run into a situation similar to Matthew Ho. From what I understand, you have run for governor before in New York. Same thing through the Libertarian Party. But this time around, now they're telling you that you can't be on the ballot. Can you explain to everyone what is going on?
Absolutely. And people think constantly the idea that, well, you know what, it's only, these types of people or whatever, throw people off the ballot. No, it's Democrats and Republicans. On some things, they agree completely. So in 2018, I ran, and in New York State, it's a very odd state in that the only way you can become a party in New York State is if your governor candidate only gets 50,000 votes on the governor line. So literally we could win a senator, we could win anything, doesn't matter. That is the only way. That's very unique. Most states, it's a percentage of the vote or something like that. Ours is just governor. And to get on the ballot in the first place, to be available on the ballot, you had to get 15,000 signatures, which wasn't crazy. We did it. We did it in 2018. We did it. We got through it. I got my 50,000 votes. And I became an official party in New York State. Life was good. And then 2 years later, the Democrats decided, you know what? We were just kidding. We're going to change all the rules and make it to where you're removed from the ballot and you have no chance. So I said, wow, that is very hard. And then they said, you know what? If you want to get back on the ballot, I know we said 15,000. We're going to triple it to 45,000 signatures and only give you 6 weeks. And move it earlier into the spring to where in New York State, we still have snowstorms. So that's what they did. So now they made it where it's virtually impossible. And of course, we sued them saying, this is impossible. This cannot be done. It is impossible. And they said, no, anyone can do it. It's easy. Not understanding that for this to happen, we would have to average 10,000 signatures per week with a week to prepare everything. That's 2,000 signatures per day if you work people 5 days a week. 10 hours a day, by the way. If you did 10 hours a day, 5 days a week. The average person who is very super good at it will maybe get 50 to 100 signatures, but the average worker will only get about 25 signatures per day. So I need 40 people to work 5 weeks, 5 days a week, 10 hours a day. Only wealthy people could possibly do that. No one else will have that kind of group. And to be clear, when it was over, we sued again, saying, look, no one made it. We had a guy worth about $50 million. He couldn't make it. We had a sitting congressman. He couldn't make it. Nobody made it. So my argument to the court was, look, this is Plessy versus Ferguson and Brown versus Board of Education. They said separate but equal was going to be equal. Then we found out it wasn't equal. So then we changed the laws. You said anybody could do this. Well, now I'm showing you nobody can do this. Literally, a sitting congressman couldn't do it. And a guy worth $50 million couldn't do it. No one did it. Literally, this is the first time in 80 years in New York State that there will not be an independent governor candidate on the ballot. First time in 80 years. So there's no independent candidate on the ballot. So even with that, I lost my lawsuit. Everyone else quit. The other guys were like, we're not going to do this. We're done. We're quitting. Not me. I'm still going. So I actually am going to be doing it again. And I have another lawsuit that hopefully I will win here September 9th. But this time, the funny part is I'm back by the Libertarian Party and also the Forward Party. And the reason why I have both endorsements is because the Forward Party understands the same thing that I do, which is without third parties, we're doomed. You may not like the Forward Party. You may not like the Libertarian Party. You may not like the Green Party. I mean, Howie Hawkins is my friend. We're both fellow Marines. You may not like those parties. One of those may be your better party. But if there's none of them, we are finished. Because now it's just a left-right paradigm. And in my state, I'm not sure any other people who are listening or watching, in my state, their campaigns are this: other guy bad. That's the campaign. They're not talking about how to solve problems, solve anything, nothing. They're just going, you have to vote for me because the other person's terrible. That is their campaign. With a third party, that changes, right? I have an answer for co-ops. I have an answer for the MTA. You may disagree with my answers, but at least now you have to come up with an answer, challenge me, have a real policy, not just go, well, I'm not a Democrat or I'm not a Republican. So I think that's the key issue. So once I got on once I tried to get on the ballot the first time, I won the first time to get on the ballot, then the Conservatives and the Republican Party sued me to throw me off the ballot. So I was off the ballot, on the ballot, on the ballot. Now I'm off the ballot. Now I'm hoping now I will actually be on the ballot September 9th.
So this goes to show everyone it's not just the Democratic Party that pulls third-party candidates off the ballot. The Republican Party also does this as well. I have to ask a question about the redistricting because I have seen this has been an issue in New York. They're changing the districts. It's causing a lot of confusion for people, especially those that were candidates, also for voters as well. Why do you believe they're doing this?
The reality of it is where the problem we have in New York State is that the courts just support the state. They don't support the people constantly. You see it all the time. So the courts just go, oh, if they said it, I guess it's good. And that has been a problem consistently. So thinking that the Democratic Party, once we had the redistrict, thought, oh, we can gerrymander even worse. Gerrymandering in New York is as bad as all the rest of the states. I mean, they're all terrible. And the Supreme Court dropped the ball not ending gerrymandering. That was a terrible decision, but they did. So now gerrymandering is still okay. One of the reasons why I'm for open primaries is because you have gerrymandering, right? In certain districts, why bother running? I mean, we probably know this. Half of the districts running, there's no one else running. It's one person because it's so gerrymandered. Literally in my state, my governor at the time was Cuomo when we were running our mayoral candidates. And Cuomo said out loud, he goes, hey, we're going to have an election here in June to figure out who's the mayor of New York. Now, the election's in November. So why did he say June? Because the primary is in June. He knows that whoever wins the primary wins the election because it's so gerrymandered, right? So that's what we have. So with that in mind, the Democrats thought, oh, we can now gerrymander our districts so much so we can throw a bunch of Republicans out of Congress by gerrymandering it perfectly to remove Republicans from these districts. A judge finally said, wow, this is so bad, I can't even accept it. And when that happened, they had someone neutral redistrict again. And by the way, that happened in the middle of me getting signatures. So the district shifted while I was getting signatures. And the law says I have to get at least 500 signatures from half of the congressional districts. There were no congressional districts. Why? Because New York State lost a congressman. So many people leave New York State. We went from 27 to 26. So when when the new districts were kicked out, you can't go back to the old ones. There's too many districts. So New York State for several weeks literally had no congressional districts. And that was while I was signing. That's how bad it is. So finally, someone neutral said, here's new districts. And when that popped up, that was in the middle of primaries. So we had to move the primaries. So we just had primaries last week. And then another one, but we've had 3 or 4 primaries this year in New York. It has been a total disaster. So I know that didn't sound great, but that's what happened in my state.
Yeah, it's been an absolute mess. I have to get your opinion. I'm curious also about the mayor race that happened in New York City. Yep. Why do you feel that someone like Eric Adams won? Because for me, like when I was listening to like all the different candidate speeches, I was like, there's no way New Yorkers are going to vote for Eric Adams. No way you're going to vote for
I knew he was going to win. I met Eric Adams probably 4 or 5 years ago at a real estate event. And I said to my friends there, he's the next mayor. There was no doubt he was going to be the next mayor. I was 100% sure. And the reason is de Blasio, by everybody's measure, whether you're a Republican, Democrat, doesn't matter, was a very bad mayor, right? Everyone knows he was a very bad mayor. Democrats said that. How do we know that? He tried to run for city council and he couldn't even get 10% of the vote in the district he lives in. So his own people, his own district didn't like him. What New Yorkers don't like is Republicans. They don't like Republicans at all. So if it's de Blasio against Republican, de Blasio wins, right? So de Blasio was a clearly bad mayor. So people wanted something the opposite. And de Blasio tried, at least his rhetoric was, I'm not sure if he actually was, but his rhetoric was very far left. He didn't always do left, but his rhetoric was far left, always. So New Yorkers heard that and said, we don't want far left. So it was a rebound, if that makes any sense. And Eric Adams was the best rebound candidate when it came to de Blasio. I think Eric Adams is our mayor because of Bill de Blasio. That's what I believe.
Ooh. Well, my whole thing is too, I feel like after everything that has happened with the NYPD in New York, especially after George Floyd,
yep,
the way that they treated some of the protesters,
yep,
I was just very shocked that people would want to vote for an ex-cop.
Well, yes. And the reason why I say it again is I think de Blasio was the reason, right? They wanted the opposite, right? Kind of how you see, like you get Obama, then you get Trump, right? You get a backlash, right? The pendulum swings. And I'm not saying Eric Adams is Trump. That's not what I'm saying. But I'm just, please be clear. I'm not saying that, but I'm saying you wind up getting that swing. So I think Eric Adams, when it came to the mainstream candidates, was the furthest right candidate in the Democratic field. And that's why I think he got it, because de Blasio's rhetoric was the furthest left. Am I making sense with this or no?
I get it. It's just, I know like at one point, Andrew Yang, I thought was leading in the polls. And then there was just this shift all of a sudden.
Yes. Andrew Yang, and look, I like Yang. I was on stage with him recently this summer. He's endorsed me. I'm happy, and I'm happy he's endorsed me. The issue I think you have with most candidates who run third party is they don't understand how to run third party, and they hire consultants that don't run third party. And when you are playing third party, the rules are different. When you are playing spoiler, the rules are different, right? And I don't think his team understood that well. They didn't understand that the rules are different. Whenever I go on any type of media, I'm treated differently because I'm third party. And if you're ever outside the mainstream system, there's different rules. I don't think his team knew that.
Okay. And you guys, you do have ranked choice voting, correct?
Only for the primary in New York City, which drives me crazy, because the Democrats in New York City know that ranked choice voting is the best type of voting, because it gives you the option of not only getting the far left or far right person. You have a chance of getting someone who's moderate if you want to. You also can have what I call offensive and defensive voting, right? So if you like someone, maybe you thought that, I know Maya was the best person to run. You thought she was the best, but you didn't know if she could win. So you vote for her first, and then whoever you like second. Well, if I don't want her, then I can take Yang. Saying that's what you thought. So you go Maya and Yang, and then you get an offensive vote and a defensive vote. That's a good thing. Democrats know that. They won't give it to the state, because if you give it to the state, there'll be a lot of people doing things like voting Howie Hawkins first, right? And then the Democrat, right? They'll be doing that. And then all of a sudden, Howie Hawkins gets a bunch of votes. And they don't want that. They want to make sure that they all get off the ballot. We only keep mainstream Democrats, mainstream Republicans. And that's the reason why we don't do it outside of New York City. But yes, only in New York City, only in the primaries. You don't get it in the actual election.
Yeah, we actually had that as a ballot initiative here in Massachusetts during 2020, and it didn't pass. And when I asked people like why they like voted against it, they said they didn't understand the question. And to be honest with you, had I not been like paying attention politically, I probably would have been confused by the question too. So I feel like that was done on purpose. So who
100%.
knows if it'll come back again. But yeah,
I talk a lot about it. It's part of my platform. It's part of the Forward Party's platform, my platform. Many third parties want ranked choice voting. It's in Alaska now. I think Maine. It's on the ballot in Nevada. So it is growing, and I think it is going to become the norm, which is the advantage. If it becomes the norm, you then can actually have an actual third party. You can have a multi-party democracy, right? Where you can create coalitions, right? Right now, you don't have to hear the people who aren't in the mainstream. You can just ignore them, and you see it constantly, right? You see it. There are a lot of people on the left who are talking to me because I actually have a plan for co-ops. You don't have that happening on the Democrats. Democrats in my state don't care about that at all. So why? They don't have to. They can ignore it. It doesn't matter, right? They didn't show up. Half the Democrats didn't even show up when they're trying to unionize here in Queens and Amazon. Nobody said a word. Democrats didn't even bother showing up. Why? They don't have to. But if you actually had a multi-party democracy, that would change everything.
I have to get you have to educate me and some of us as well. What exactly do libertarians believe? Because I've been saying this for a while. I wanted to talk to someone who is a libertarian. I like to have different voices on this show. How do you feel, for example, let's look at the issue of healthcare.
Sure.
What is your opinion about healthcare for everyone in this country?
Yeah. What most libertarians would agree, not all. We of course also have our fringes, as every party does. Most libertarians are going to say this one important idea. You do you, right? That's the concept. The concept is you can be as liberal or as conservative as you want to be. Just don't force your view on others. That you should be getting people to change their minds through persuasion and not through coercion. And that tends to be a common theme throughout libertarianism. Now, some people go very far, some people don't. But if you understand that concept, that if you want to change people's minds through your works, your example, your community, we're okay with it. But without that, we tend to not be okay with it. So that's an overall concept that makes any sense. So now healthcare specifically. If you look right now at healthcare in America, there's becoming a two-tier system. I see it here in New York City. You probably see it there. The wealthy doctors don't take insurance anymore. The best doctors are stopping to take insurance. And if you're on Medicare, Medicaid, you can't find a doctor. And if you're wealthy, you don't go to managed care. You don't do it. You go to private doctors, you write a check, or you swipe your credit card, or you're part of some system. And that's how people get healthcare who are wealthy right now. This is why what I want to do, and I have a plan literally on my website that talks about the idea of if you're on Medicare or Medicaid, either one, absolutely. The government tends to know about how much money you're going to spend every year. They have actuaries who know. You're this age with this issue, you're probably going to spend, sake of argument, $1,000 a year on healthcare. I say put that on an actual card, like your EBT card or something else. Put it on a card. Go out there and use your healthcare as you see fit. Now you might go, Larry, what happens if you get sick? It's okay. I'm not getting rid of Medicare. You still have it. It's still there. If you have a catastrophic issue, it's still there. But I'm giving you the option of going to the same doctors the wealthy go to. When you start going to those doctors, what's going to wind up happening? Those doctors will see that and go, so you can just swipe your card? Yeah. If you want to come to me, swipe the card, we're good. They'll start seeing that. They'll start marketing to that group of people. People will start seeing that. More doctors will ship into that world and pricing will come down. I want pricing of the best doctors to come down. I don't want to reinforce a two-tier system where the working, poor, and middle class get whatever doctors are left over and the wealthy get the best doctors. So if you make that happen, it will shift. How do I know this, right? How do I know this to be true? Number one, because if you look at the secondary system of healthcare right now, meaning non-essentials, things like LASIK eye surgery, body enhancement, cosmetic dentistry, any of those things. You see any of those. In every case, the price has come down, accessibility has increased. There are already models right now trying to help people out. And I'll use the example, believe it or not, of computers. If you go back, say, 10 or 15 years, most computer repair shops were what's called break fix. That means if your computer breaks down, people come in and you pay per hour, they fix your computer. It's in their best interest for your computer to be broken so they can get paid. Now it's not the case. Most people do some type of monthly fee and they fix your computer whenever they want, whenever you need it to be fixed. It's a common way. There's a company, believe it or not, called Forward, not like the party, but called Forward, that's doing that now. You drop about $150 per month, you're able to go whenever you want. It's just like a gym membership. Their goal is to make sure that you are taken care of. If you're healthy, you don't show up. That's good. Most private doctors like it when you just come in and swipe your card. But if you go to a doctor who takes insurance, here's what will happen every single time. Once a doctor takes insurance, you go to that place, your appointment is at 2, you get seen at 3:45 because the doctor stocks 3 or 4 or 5 people up at the same time because so many people cancel. Then when you show up, they see you for 10, 15 minutes. They always end it with one of 3 things: a procedure, a prescription, or a test. Why? That's how they get paid. So when people who are wealthy say, let's go Medicare for all, let's go Medicaid for all, let's go do that. When they say that, what they're saying is, you poors take those doctors. I'm going to keep my rich doctor. Good luck with that. They're okay with you having managed care. I'm not. I want a better system for everybody. I want everyone to have better care, but I'm not going to get rid of Medicaid and Medicare. If you have to fall back to it, you should, but I want you to be able to have better doctors.
So I'm not wealthy and I want everyone to have Medicare for all.
I know.
Like I feel like when I look at other countries, like I lived in Germany for a while. So I've lived in countries where everyone has health care, and it boggles my mind why we can't have that here in the United States. And I think it's because they want the big pharma companies to benefit. A lot of these politicians have pharma companies as donors, Blue Cross Blue Shield, health insurance companies as donors, and that's really what they benefit. So why not just go to a Medicare for all system and give everybody?
Look, you can do that if you want to. Let me tell you what's going to happen. The reason why it hasn't worked well is because America has a bad history of this, right? America has tied its insurance companies to actual jobs and wage labor. That wasn't a good idea. Most other countries haven't done that. The Germans began theirs in the 1880s, I think. 1880s, they began healthcare for all. It had nothing to do with companies. The Germans have a better history of this. Our history is garbage. Our history is terrible. So I'm not saying you're wrong in what we could have done in the past. If we can shift our culture into that, maybe, but that's not where we are. I'm trying to give you a realistic answer that will shift people into the right mindset. We cannot repair this system tomorrow. If you tomorrow said everybody gets Medicare for all tomorrow, here's what would happen. Insurance companies would run it. There'd be Medicare supplements. That's what would happen. You're right. Pharma would win. That would happen. Most of the doctors who are decent would opt out of Medicare and then all go into private systems. How do I know that? It's happening now in New York City. That's literally happening right now. If you just did it without changing it, what will happen is most people in America who are working poor and middle class will have healthcare insurance. That's true, but they will have secondary doctors, secondary care, and it's not going to work well. You've got to make changes to the actual culture before you can make changes that you want.
Why do you think that? You said most doctors would opt out. Why do you think that?
It's happening already because there's literally there is a job description right now, a job, I should say, that people who their job is to collect money from doctors because insurance companies don't want to pay. They don't want to pay. So what's happening is now that they have to get people who will actually spend they make six figures so they can collect for doctors. Doctors are getting tired of that. That's why they keep opting out. They just keep opting out because, like, I don't want to pay some guy to chase the insurance company to get paid. I don't want to deal with this issue. I'm out. If you're telling me you can make a cultural change in America, I'm open to the idea. Maybe it's a better plan. What I see now, if you did this automatically, immediately, the current system, the way it's set up with the pharma companies, it's not going to go well, is what I'm telling you. The wealthy aren't going to put up with this. They're going to go into their own world, take the best doctors. You want to try, it's okay. I go to private doctors too, right? I do. So I'm trying to give my plan, whether you agree or not with it, is trying to get other people to have better choices and better options. If you go to Medicare for all right now, it is my opinion. And if I'm wrong, look, we're probably going to anyway. We're going to find out. It's fine. If I'm wrong, then I'll be wrong. Awesome. Life is good. But I have a feeling I'm going to be right in this one. If we go to Medicare for all, you have a lot of people saying, what the hell is going on here? I don't like this system at all.
So let's talk about the New York Health Act, because this actually, at one point I was looking at this, I think it was last year, and I actually thought, I said, well, New York State is probably going to be the first state to get something like this passed because there was more talk about that. What has happened with that? Because like last year, I felt like there was a lot of buzz around it. Now I don't hear much about it anymore. And from what I understand, and correct me if I'm wrong, but from what I understand, even people who didn't live in New York, say they lived in New Jersey, but they worked in New York, they could also fall under the New York Health Act.
The problem to be full with you, and it's going to make some of your audience just want to explode. It's too expensive. New York State has been losing population for 10 years. We actually lost a congressman recently. People are fleeing our state in droves. They're going to Florida. They're going all over the place. They're physically leaving. Our budget has exploded from about 180 billion to 220 billion. And New York State doesn't have a Fed. So we can't just print money. We're literally in hundreds of billions of dollars of debt. Illinois is worse than us. Illinois will probably go under in the next 5 or 10 years. It'll go under. Behind them, probably Kansas. They're in trouble too. And then maybe New York State too. They're all going to go under. So we can't, the dollars are just not there for us anymore. We were able to do well last time because we had huge bonuses from our financial industry that gave us tons of money from income. About 20 billion worth of those people have left our state in the past 2 years, so we won't be getting that money back. But that happened last time, and the federal government wrote us big checks, so that was able to help us out. After that, the cash isn't there for it. If we do it, we'll just go further and further into debt. But what I'm saying here is there's an answer. And the answer is, without question, finding a way of raising money without making the tax burden any higher. You can do that by creating a fund. It's a New York State social trust, similar to what Norway does or similar to what Singapore does. Permanent capital right now is spending tons of money buying up land everywhere, buying up housings. One of the reasons, there were others, but one of the reasons why the housing market's exploded and why some people are renters, because permanent capital has spent so much time buying up all this land, raising the prices up and forcing everyone into rentership. People who don't want to rent. I mean, some people want to rent, no worries. But a lot of people who don't want to rent are forced into renting. Pull that money out, put it into a social trust. How do I know it will work? It's already working in other countries. Once that trust comes up from that money, we can begin to have that money to spend for other things. So they will happily put in for a yearly dividend. They'll get their money back, and we'll have cash to spend on other things that we want, social issues that we want to work on. This way we can support the people who need support without having to increase the tax base. The tax base is getting so high that many people are leaving. You ask most New Yorkers why they moved to Florida, at least 6 in 10 are going to tell them it's because of the high taxation. So let's keep people in New York, get the wealthy to pay without adding taxation. We can do it. There are ways of making it happen without taxation.
Well, I would say New York has enough money to give the police. They have money when it comes to that.
You're not going to hear me fight you on that. I'm libertarian. Yep, I'm not fighting you on that one. Look, do you think I agree with the war on drugs? No. You think I agree with locking everybody up? No. Absolutely. No, I'm not at all. I'm not on board with that whatsoever. We agree. No problem on that one. Look, if freedom means the freedom to do what you want without hurting others, to include loving who you want to love, being with who you want to be with, putting whatever substance you choose appropriate into your body, all of those things, right? All of those things. It's just don't hurt others, right? Do what you feel is right for yourself. The Libertarian Party has been pro cannabis for 50 years, pro gay and trans rights, 50 years. I'm not even joking. I mean, for years, we were way ahead of Democrats on this one, not even close, way ahead. And we still are 100%.
So I have to ask in reference to education. So I've worked in higher ed for over 10 years. So stay that way for over 10 years. And I have seen the cost of tuition just greatly increase. There's no stopping that. There seems to be no accountability for the colleges to hold them back on that. And I know recently, Joe Biden has decided to cancel $10,000 to $20,000 of student loan debt for people who fit a certain income. I said that he should have canceled all of it, but I think he's not going to do that because that would take away from recruitment for the military industrial complex. That's one of the benefits, one of the perks that you get if you join the military.
I was a Marine for many years. I agree. I got my GI Bill. I know.
Yeah. So I want to get your take on education in reference to higher ed and K through 12. What do you feel needs to change in New York in specifically?
A lot. And I'll touch the higher ed piece, which is more national. And then I'll also cover New York State specifically. When it comes to higher ed, you can fix this problem too, right? I'm not against helping people who were in trouble at all. But you have two other problems. One, you have the idea that some people are going to say, wait a minute, I did the right thing. So you have to somehow appease the people who are going to fight you on, wait a minute, I paid mine off. Why is someone else getting it? And there's millions of Americans who feel that way. So you should do something for them. If you're going to help out the others, there should be something for them. Second, I don't want to be here 10 years from now with the same problem. So I've got to fix the problem too. So 3 parts. So if you want to help out people, awesome, help them out. No problem. Not against that. But second, I think the colleges who have taken such a massive advantage with these government-backed loans without have any accountability, they've got to give something back. And my point is maybe you give back a year of college to everyone who, paid back their loans. Now you might go, Larry, I'm not going back to school. No worries. It's transferable. You can give it to your kid, give it to your friend, sell it if you want to. But the college got to give something back. They have scammed for decades on this, and they got to give something back. Now, that at least allows the people who did the right thing in their mind to get something back. And it doesn't punish you or I. So help the people out and give people something for what they did. But the last piece, there's a model that works already. And the model is, believe it or not, the car industry. Yes, I know I'm a libertarian. Larry's using business. Yes. What did you expect? I'm a libertarian. Did you expect something else? So of course, the car industry, right? If you are my age or older and you bought a car when you were younger, you remember that you didn't finance the car through the car company, you financed it through a bank. You went to a bank, got a loan, and then bought the car. Now, if you go buy a Ford or a Honda, whatever, you go to the Honda or the Ford finance company. So that company acts as a finance company, which is simply allow all these colleges to finance their own education. Done. Most of these colleges have massive endowments anyway. They have tons of money. They use that to back the loans. What does that mean? Well, guess what? If you're backing the loan and I give you a crappy degree or I don't help you, you don't get a job, you're not getting your money back. That now aligns the college's goals with yours. And if the degree you're getting is usually not going to get you a very good job, then they'll have to lower the price because you won't be able to afford to pay it back. If the degree is very high, they'll raise the price because you're going to get a good job or whatever. They have to give you a good degree. Right now, colleges have no reason to give you a good degree. Why? There's no punishment for it if they screw up. If they give you a piece of paper that sucks and you're stuck being a barista, and here where I live in New York, I don't know how many baristas I've met who have college degrees, if not master's degrees, and they are baristas, and they're struggling to pay back their loans. So I don't want this to happen 10 years from now. Make them do this and support their own product, and they will have to give you a better product. So I'm okay with it as long as those three things exist.
Why not just make the public universities free?
You could if you want to, but then what's their incentive to give you good education?
Well, no, I'd push back on that because the city University of New York at one point was free.
It was.
So we've done this before in this country.
Sure.
I think colleges, they're operating like a business. They just want to make a lot of money, and they realize this is something they can make a lot of money off of. But I would argue that just because college is free doesn't mean you're getting less of an education, because look at a country like Germany. They have some of the best engineers in the world. So I don't necessarily agree with that. I think community college and public colleges should be free.
You could do that. But again, now who's paying for it? If you're going to tell me that you would use a system that I talked about earlier, to where many countries who have that, again, I'll bring up Norway. Norway is an example. There are many, many countries that use massive funds to pay for this, right? So if you're going to use funds from a trust to pay for this, I'm not against it. I'm with you. As I said, this trust can pay for education. If you wanted to add that education into, say, state colleges or city colleges, I'm in. I would do it. I don't have a problem with it at all. But I was talking about over the course of the entire country, right? For New York State, if you were saying the city universities and the state SUNY and CUNY that we'd pay for it that way, make it free, I'm not against that. I'm not against that. My issue is in New York State, if I then add more of a tax burden to my people, they are going to pack up and leave. They're leaving in droves, up to $500,000 a year. So if we could do it that way, I'm okay with that. I'm okay with that. But
yeah, well, it's something I've noticed when it comes to, helping out the people in this country. Nobody asked how we're going to pay for these wars. No one.
Libertarians ask, oh, no, please. No, that's not fair. Libertarians ask that all the time. All the time.
You're right. That's a good point. But I mean, billions and billions of dollars go into Ukraine, but we can't ask for free college and free community college.
I agree. Yeah, I'm not going to fight you on either. Libertarians are always talking about stop going to war, stop killing people, stop sending our troops overseas, stop giving money to Ukraine. Yes. So when it comes to libertarians, that on that case, you are incorrect. We have been yelling about this all day long. You should not be sending these money over to Ukraine. We shouldn't be fighting wars. 100%. We should not be doing this. And we don't want to bail out banks. I'm not about bailing out banks. You will never hear libertarians say bail out banks, bail out this. I've been in the public eye in a major or minor way, depending on whether I was running or not, for the past 5 years. You will never once hear me go, oh, I can't wait to bail out banks or fight war. Never happened once. Not a thing. So I agree with you, right? And this makes libertarians angry when I say it. When I tell libertarians, look, I know many libertarians don't like socialists. I get that. That's a common fight. And they go, well, we're going to give all this money away. And I say, they have a point. We have money for all this other garbage. So why don't we have money for them? It's a valid point. I agree with you. I'd like to fix it to where We take our money that we make for the wealthy, give it to the people in our country who require help, and stop throwing money overseas. I'm with you.
All right, cool.
Yes. So let me now go to what I think is a big change in education here. One of the reasons why we have problems in education is because our education system is an industrial era education system. It is absolutely the wrong system, right? Absolutely. We should not be doing K through 12 at all. We should be doing K through 10. Actually, pre-K through 10. Pre-K through 10 is what we should be doing. We should be paying for pre-K through 10th grade off the bat. That should be the norm. Once you get to 10th grade, you want to start thinking about what are you going to do with your life. Not waiting till you go to college and graduate at 22 and start thinking about what you do with your life. You want to start thinking early. Why do you want to start thinking early? Well, Larry, people make mistakes. Absolutely. But making a mistake, a price for failure at 16 is nothing compared to the price for failure at 26. So I want to start getting kids thinking about their future at 16, earlier on, thinking about trade schools, thinking about, specialized schools, thinking about prep schools, advanced degrees, thinking about that at 10th grade. It's a whole different way of looking at it. And if you like Europe, that's what Europe does. You've been telling me about Germany, about all those countries do K through 10, right? They're not going to 12th grade. I mean, they are, but their 12th is very different than us. Our problem is our money, most of the money that comes in New York State, a big chunk of it, comes either from localized taxes and or federal and state grants. When you have federalized and state grants, they incentivize the schools only by their graduation rate going into college, their placement rates into college. This is unnecessary. It should be whether the kids and the parents are satisfied with schooling. College is not for everybody. I'm not against college. I'm against us pushing people into college. That's not the right answer, right? And I hear that people will say, but Larry, college is the way to success. It's a way to success. And more, less the only way. There are a lot of people who are making a lot of money now not going to college. It's common. There are ways you can do that. Or go to college later in life. I went to college when I was 21. I wasn't ready when I was 17. I was a punk. I didn't want to go at 17. I joined the Marine Corps at 17, right? I became a better person, a better man, and I went when I was 21, which was better. But why can't you be pushing people into trade schools if they want to go there? You can't find that in my state. I can't talk about the states. I can talk from my state. You can't find, you're going to struggle to find a guidance counselor who says, hey, why don't you go to our trade school, our BOCES? No, they're going to say, don't go to those. That's for the dumb kids. That's for the bad kids. All the time in my state. So now kids are getting pressured is a better way of saying it. Pressured to go into colleges that they don't want to go to and they shouldn't go to. We see with our veterans coming out of the military. They come out of the military and they go to school because someone told them to go to school. If you wanted to go to school, you wouldn't have gone to the military. You would have gone to college. A lot of these guys didn't want to go to college. I was one of them. So we have to change the system to where now we're focusing on kids being happy. And my plan is once you hit 10th grade, if you pass a test, you have a high school diploma. Once you have a high school diploma, the state will provide you with a credit of $20,000. You have 5 years to use it. Very similar to a GI Bill, similar style. You can go to any 2-year school you want to. You want to go to a 2-year trade school, a 2-year prep school, right? You say you want to go into engineering or you want to be a doctor. Go to a prep school for that so you're ready to go in. The average kid now across America, it takes 6 years to graduate college. The average kid, if they even graduate. Why? For most kids, the last year of high school is almost a waste. It's basically just smoking weed and playing video games and study hall and stuff like that. For too many kids. There are some who aren't, but for too many, it's that. Why do you think they're so eager to jump into the military? Are they so eager to just, I'm going to college now? And for many kids, college, the first year of college is 13th grade because they're not ready. Instead, give them a couple years to get ready, do the right thing, do any of the thing you want to do. You want to go trade school, prep school. Say you're that really smart kid who you're going to get a doctorate. Great. Go get an associate's degree at 16. Go do it. You have when you're 18. Or go to trade school and get a job when you're 18. You can be 24 years old and have a degree that you don't like and be working at Starbucks with $100,000 of debt, or you can be 24, be a plumber, no debt, and be making at least $70K a year, if not 100. Do what you need to do. That's my point. You asked what I thought about education. That's what I think about education.
That's interesting. I think that another thing that we need to look at too is the fact that some of these programs that I felt really were beneficial to students at an early age were removed from the public school system. Yeah. Wood shop,
Yep.
That's a big one.
100%.
People don't know how to build. They don't know how to make things with their hands anymore.
Absolutely.
Some schools used to have like automotive classes. My dad told me about this when he was in school.
Mm-hmm.
Those things have been taken away. A lot of the music and arts
Yep.
have been taken away from the schools as well. So it's almost just like you're kind of like trained to remember all of this, memorize all of this stuff so that you can go to college.
And this is, again, your audience is already, I know, mad at me. It's fine. I still love you guys, even if you're mad at me. They're going to be mad at me again when I say this. The reason is federal government. Why? Every school in New York State, and I assume your state too, I assume, is without question being judged by the federal government with standardized testing. That's how they get paid. That's how they get those federal grants. So what does that mean? That means that the teachers are pressured into doing two things, ELA and math. They don't get woodshop. Why? That's not on the test. They don't get home ec. That's not on the test. They don't know how to do basic contract work, which I say in high school, you should be doing basic we all click that, I accept the terms, and we don't know basic contract law. That should be taught in high school. Basic contract law, how interest works, rent versus buying. That should be taught in high school. None of that's there. That's not in a test, right? So Sharpe isn't there. Civics isn't there anymore in most schools, right? Of course. Now let's go to private schools. Private schools have all that stuff. Again, the wealthy are set. They don't care about this stuff. What do they care? Their kids all go to private school. They get whatever they want because they're writing checks. I'm talking about ways to actually fix things, give a chance for the average kid to have a better chance.
I think, I could talk about education all night. I could talk about education all night.
No,
but
I think your audience wants you to yell at me. Feel free to yell at me. I don't mind. I don't mind. I think
that one of the issues that's been coming up a lot, especially with this crisis with Russia and Ukraine, is war. And the United States government spending so much money on the military industrial complex instead of using that money in other places. And I want to get your opinion about that, because it looks like now, I saw earlier today on Twitter, they're already talking about sending arms to Taiwan.
Yep. Look, again, there's everything you've heard me talk about was about trying my best to do what I think is best, which obviously your audience disagrees. But still, I hope that when your audience is mad at me, they at least know that I am arguing in good faith, that I do believe that my views are correct. I'm not just trying to troll you guys. But in any case, always, I'm never going to say I think the right answer is taking the money that we all, work hard for and in some cases just print when the Fed prints it and give it to others. No, of course I want to keep it within our country and help the people in America who need it. No, look, I grew up in the South Bronx. My mom was an addict. My mom's a felon, or was a felon. She passed away. My mom was a felon. I understand what it's like to be poor. I understand what it's like to not have what you want. I get it. I understand what it's like to have your life, trashed because of the government. I get that completely. So what I'm trying to do is create a world where I think it will work better. What I noticed when I came back from the Marine Corps, I pulled my mother out of jail. She had only 2 garbage bags. So she had left from everything she had built. My mom was also an immigrant, which is even worse. So she came out, and I used my savings that I had in the Marine Corps, and I got her an apartment and a car, and we tried to get her a job. How hard she worked to get a job. And if you've ever had a felon in your life, I don't know if you ever have, but if you have a felon in your life, you realize how they have to lie on their resume and lie on everything to try to hope that. And my mom was a hostage because once she got a job, she couldn't say anything. She got fired. There's no job for her out there, right? She gets fired. And if they do a background check, she is fired. So what do I do? Well, instead, I said, you know what? I'm going to start a business. And the reason why I started a business, and my mom had remarried at the time, so I had a stepfather. And I said, we're going to start a business. And in this business, my mom is going to be 100% owner. And he was like, what about you and me? Nope. She's 100% owner or I'm not in. And they were like, why? I said, because my mom's 100% owner. No one can ever fire her. She is no longer a hostage. She's now her own person. And that was my push in entrepreneurship. And since then, I've seen that the ownership mindset is everything. An ownership mindset is everything. If people begin to have ownership mindset, they will move further. It's not a magical pill. It doesn't fix everything. People still need services. People still fall down, right? But what I saw with my mom is the systems the government had to help her were not helping. She was going right back into the same thing. My father, believe it, that's going to sound crazy. My father was a corrections officer at Rikers Island. So I've seen both sides of this, right? There's a magic pill for people who have been convicted of a felony to get them back in action. It's 5 years of work. When someone who's a felon has 5 years of work, the odds of them going back to jail are less than someone who's never been a felon. That's magic. My goal is to make that better, not to have some government program. Instead, you know what I want to do in New York State? If you are a small business, or any business, but big businesses will never do this. So I'll say any business. If you're a business in New York State and you hire a felon, for every felon you hire, you do not have to pay any payroll tax on that felon for 2 years. If over 50% of your employees are felons, you pay no state income tax for 2 years. And someone always tell me, wait a minute, hold on, wait a minute. Then they'll just hire these felons 2 years and fire them. Good, you're training my felon population and you're giving them a resume so they can get back in action. I'm okay with that. They may go, Larry, that sounds crazy. Everything we've tried since then has failed. Since the war on drugs in the 1970s, everything else has failed. So maybe my idea is wrong. Maybe it is. But can it be any worse than everything else we've tried? It's been nothing but failure. I still see it. And I see it in my veteran population more than anything else. I see them collapsing everywhere. We can help them too. The government programs aren't working. I have a better answer.
How do you feel about, in reference to the criminal justice system, because one of the problems that we have with our system, at least in this country, there really isn't rehabilitation.
Correct.
Not the way that it should be. I don't know, some people will chime in and say, well, you can take class when you're in jail and you can read books. Yeah, but that's not really rehabilitation.
Correct.
And that's something that I do wish would change, that there would actually be real rehabilitation. I think they need to look at some of the other models that are happening in countries like Norway, what they're actually doing, how they actually rehabilitate the prisoners. But in reference to incarceration, one of the things that's come up before is that there are people who are in prison because they have committed a crime. And then you have people that are in jail, not necessarily because they committed a crime, but because they can't afford cash bail.
Correct. Agreed.
And I want to get your opinion about that. What do you think should happen with the bail system?
Let me touch two of those pieces. One is, in Massachusetts, you have a good one. You have a plan. I believe it's called the Humvee program. Mm-hmm. And the Humvee program is basically, if I'm going to generalize. It's basically, you have a unit of people who are of the same type, in this case, veterans. So you then take the veterans who've been arrested, and those who seem to be working well on the way out, they go shipped into the Humvee program, which is run by volunteers and some corrections officers, but mostly volunteers. And then it becomes almost like a halfway house. And the recidivism rate, I think, in Massachusetts is something like 80% or something like that. But for this, it's less than 10. Massive change. So I want to follow that. I call them CPUs, which is community, CRUs, community, hold on, CRU. I always call it a crew. I've actually forgotten what the middle is. So anyways, rehabilitation, there we go. Community rehabilitation units, which is a similar issue than Humvee. I'm following the Humvee program that works in Massachusetts, right? So now we can have it. Say it's all, I'm making this up, working moms, or maybe it's certain addicts, or maybe it's veterans, or maybe it's of a certain gender, or maybe it's of a certain ethnic background, whatever I think will work. I'm open to any of these options. And you create these areas. And whenever someone has a problem, addiction, mental health, they fall down, the person who's going to help them most is someone who's been through it before. So I want a volunteer core of people to come in. I want the nonprofit sections to work alongside the corrections officers. Corrections officers know how to control people, usually men, because the vast majority of prisoners are men. So they know how to control men. That's it. That's what they know, control men. So great, bring in the nonprofits who know how to rehabilitate people. So now we have them together, and then they can start to rehabilitate people and get them out and make that recidivism rate go down. If we do that, we can change it. I completely agree with you. We should change it. When it comes to bail reform is a wonderful idea. It just was not implemented well in New York State. And there are two reasons why it was implemented well. Number one, it was during COVID when we decided to do it. So because it was during COVID, everybody just threw everybody back out because they were afraid of COVID. Wow, bad timing. That was just unlucky right there. It made everything bad. So the timing was just bad. The second thing is, we didn't focus it on something else, which is first-time offenders. We really should be focusing bail reform on first-time offenders. That should be the focus of it. If you've been arrested 6 times in a week, you probably shouldn't be out on bail, whether you're poor or not. It should be irrelevant, right? If you've been arrested 6 times in 1 week, the odds are, don't get me wrong, there will be somebody who is, shouldn't be in jail. Don't get me wrong. But the idea, it should be focused on first-time offenders. Bail reform is a real thing. It should be done. It was not done well at all. And the judges, sadly, in my state, made things worse, because the judges in my state, they were against bail reform. They actually wanted to keep all the power with them. So they actually made sure it failed. The judges in my state made it worse than anything else. But you're correct. Bail reform is a good idea. There are lots of issues we should be fixing. I'm on board with bail reform. I am.
Well, I think when we look at most crime is poverty driven. And this is the
systemic.
point I always, and systemic. There's systemic there, but there's also poverty. I mean,
agreed.
People are talking about the crime rate has increased in New York. They're like, crime is crazy here now. And I'm like, people are there's desperation. There's a lot of despair. And so my question is why aren't people focusing on how to fix the poverty situation? For example, Mississippi has jumped on board with this. I was surprised it was Mississippi, but they've jumped on board with this, and they decided, how we're going to fix the homeless problem? We're going to build more homes for them, specifically 100%. For them. And I would like to see more states get on board with this. And New York City, I lived in New York many years ago. It was expensive then. It's expensive now. It's very difficult to make it there financially if you don't already have some type of help, I would say. And you're right. A lot of people are leaving New York. That's been going on for years.
100%.
I've seen people leave, and it's just too expensive. It's happening here in Boston too. Yep. People are being pushed out because of gentrification. These neighborhoods don't look the same anymore. The last time I was in Brooklyn, I was like, what is this? What happened to Brooklyn? So it's just, at some point, when is anyone just going to put a stop to it and stop selling properties to these investors and pushing poor Black people out of these neighborhoods? When is someone going to put a stop to that? Because where else are people supposed to go?
I agree. Everything you've said, I agree with 100%. I think there are several answers. I wish it was just one answer. It isn't. I'm going to give you a couple of them. I hope I don't drive your chat too crazy, but I will give you a couple of answers. And at least the one thing you'll hear me say, and I hope your audience will respect this, is at no point did I go into theory. At no point did I just blame the other party. I didn't do any of that. I actually gave you answers, even though you guys clearly did not like them. But at least I gave you answers. I did not hide, and I gave you answers. And I will give you answers for this too. The first piece is, you are totally correct. We have a big problem in most cities, but New York City is bigger. And there are several pieces that you want to handle on this. It's not a simple answer. Piece number one is public housing. Public housing is a disaster in New York City. I mean, it's an embarrassment. We should be ashamed. And people say it's underfunded. It's not underfunded. It's terribly managed. And there are several ways we can fix this. Number one, we should be allowing people in public housing, if they want to own the home. And we don't do that. Why aren't we creating a rent to own situation within public housing? We should do that. That would be a great idea. Now, some people don't want to own. I'm okay with that, but there are many who would want to. What happens? They start owning. When you own a home, two things happen. Number one, other people want to help you because you're a homeowner, number one. But number two, now you have an asset. When wealthy people leave, right? When they leave their home, they get a check because they always have some kind of equity in their home. So when wealthy people leave their home and move, they get a check. When not wealthy people move, they might get 1/2 of 1 month's rent back, maybe, if they're lucky. Often they don't. What do wealthy people have that non-wealthy people don't have? That is equity. Let's start giving people equity in public housing. I'm not joking. I think it's a great idea. They've done that before in Singapore and in London. Again, this is a model that already worked, and it worked well. It was better. It's not a be-all, end-all, but that's the first step. So now people, if they want to, can start renting to own. Don't change the rent. The rent's the same. Start doing that. But something else. Encourage the people, the big business. Your point's very valid. Permanent capital is buying up all of the real estate and crushing people. Totally correct. 3 ways we deal with that. Number one, give them something else to invest in. That is my idea of the New York State Social Trust. That's piece one. Isn't enough, but that's one piece. Second piece, allow them a benefit to their end taxes if they do rent to own. So now you can have literally these companies create rent to own properties that will get more people buying. But at the end, instead of paying massive taxes in New York State, you give them a huge tax break if they allow rent to own. Why? Because they'll actually make less money up the front end but they'll make more at the back end. They'll still make their money because they're going to make their money. I know some of you go and say, don't let them make money. Profit's bad. That's a fantasy. They're going to make their money. So I'm saying, let's make their money in the back end, help out people to have ownership and have some actual assets up front. You do that, you'll have more of them doing that instead. So now you get more people to do that. That will help also. But I'll add on top of that, when it comes to the homelessness is not a monolith, right? There are many types of people who are homeless. There are working poor who are homeless, mentally ill who are homeless, people who have addiction problems who are homeless. It's not a monolith, right? So we've got to be able to fix that issue and touch each of them separately. When it comes to shelters, as a general rule, people who are working poor are able to get around and deal with all the issues required, all the paperwork to get into the shelters. But people who aren't working poor, people who have addiction problems or mental health problems, they can't do it. We're asking too much of them. They can't. So instead, allow nonprofits more leeway in creating tiny housing, more leeway in building houses. We have a couple of them right now in New York. Jericho Project is one of them. And they have it to where, again, they are community-based, meaning either people who are, say, all from the same or all from a same, community, whatever that is. And so say it's working moms or single moms as an example, as one community. Well, they have tiny houses up top, and then the bottom they have community areas. And then the bottom, they're going to have people like, healthcare, childcare, stuff like that to help them out. And what happens is the person agrees only one thing, to pay 1/3 of their income. If your income's nothing, you pay nothing. Your income's $100, $33. 1/3 of your income is the deal to be in this place. What does that mean? You're never kicked out. So you leave when you're ready to leave. Hopefully you make a bunch of money and you're successful and you're happy and you say, you know what, I'm making too much money to be in this place, and I go someplace else. But what we found actually happens in these cases is people stay and they become mentors for others because they believe in their love in the community. And it allows mentors to help people who've been through the thing, addiction, veterans, whatever the case may be. You begin to do those things, things will become better. Right? You can fix this problem, but people have to be able to build tiny homes. People who've been homeless for many years often don't even want to leave the street. It becomes a life for them. They actually don't trust going to shelter. They don't trust this. You got to give them a tiny home. If you give them a larger home, they will literally make themselves a home within that home in one room. So give them tiny homes. In most cities, it's against the law. Change those laws to allow tiny homes, build more, incentivize the heavy hitters to do something else, and to invent and rent to own, make rent to own more common. Over the course of several years, sadly, I wish I could solve it tomorrow, you will find more people fixing this. If you just build more housing, that's all you do, you will still have a problem with the mentally ill and the addicts. They're not going to go. So it can't only be that. It must be that and other things to get them in. That's the issue. The last piece I bring up is specifically New York City. This is the idea of what I call the carrying caboose. The carrying caboose is many people who don't go to shelters wind up going to the MTA, right? Our subway system, our bus system is a common thing. So let's meet them where they are. The back car of every other train is literally a carrying caboose. It is a caboose that is sponsored by some company that wants to look good. I don't care. Some pharma company. I don't care. Give me the money so I can help the people. I don't care what your goal is. They do it. No cops, because many of the people who are homeless are afraid of cops, and addicts are too. So it's private security. They'll go then. There are people that get Wi-Fi who can help them out. Oh, it's Johnny. Johnny, are you on your meds? Are you having a problem? I do this. Hey, Johnny, let me help you get into the system that you have fallen out of. So I can get you into that tiny home. I can get you into that shelter. I can get you into the place that you can't get on your own because you don't have the facility to do it, because you have mental illness issues or you have addiction issues. Now that actually then meets them where they are. Now I gave you a lot. I know I did, but this is a serious problem. And there is no just build more houses. That's not going to work. It's not a monolith. There are lots of people with different issues. You've got to make many things happen. You've got to deal with the bigger boys too.
I know that Massachusetts, some of the public housing communities here, they've made promises to those residents that they could rent and then eventually own their apartment.
Yep.
In fact, I've talked to some of the tenants, and it wasn't true.
Correct.
It was just another thing that they told them. And it's really upsetting because the city they don't really get involved. Like Boston Housing Authority is we can't really step foot on it because it's public housing. And it's just, they just get over on them. And it's really sad. But
I agree completely, which is why you want to have an executive, a governor or a mayor who is 100% on board, who's saying, no, you will do this. If you don't do it, I'm hitting you personally, right? And this is a piece that I bring up, which most people don't understand. This is very libertarian. And this is the idea of a unit that finds victims. What I mean by that, we use it when it comes to the environmental issues, right? I want to create an environmental victims unit. Most departments of preservation or of conservation or whatever the case may be don't know how to prosecute people and break the corporate veil and get the individuals who made the decisions. Very rare, almost never happens. Imagine if you actually had a unit that's what their job was. Their job was, I'm going to actually find the right people and I'm going to put up an actual case and I'm going to give it to the AG to prosecute an executive who made a decision that hurt people. That almost never happens. Imagine that happened. That is actually libertarian. It is an individual taking responsibility for their poor decisions on hurting other people. There's a victim. Punish them. Instead, what do? We go, big company is bad. We'll fine them $10 million when they made $80 billion on the deal they did. They don't care. That's cost doing business. But now you come after the individual, things change. You should do that in many cases to include people who are scamming people when they're supposed to rent to own and don't do it. Punish the individual who made the decision. I thought I'm going to screw them. Great. You going to jail or you're paying out of your pocket. Either one. I'm okay.
All right. So Larry, when can you remind everyone, because we did have people come in later, can you remind them when is your lawsuit? When are you going to court again?
I am going to court September 9th, and I'm hoping that I'll be able to get on the ballot. If I get on the ballot, then there will be third parties in New York State. And that's what I'm trying to achieve. But more importantly, that most people don't get, I know that a lot of your audience is not happy with my ideas. I get it. But here's what I'm telling you. If I'm in a debate stage, both the Democrat and Republican will have to answer my questions. They will have to come up with actual plans. You might go, yeah, if you lean right or lean left, and most of your audience leans left. If you lean left, you're going to say Democrats are going to solve it. You lean right, Republicans are going to solve it. No, they're not. Democrats have run my state for 20 years. It is not getting better. Republicans have watched them for 20 years, and they have no plans. So you might think they're going to do better. They're not in my state. Maybe your state's run better than mine, perhaps. Mine is not being run well. And Democrats are not doing their job, and Republicans have no answers. They're not even, I guess they're a party in theory, but not in my state. They don't do anything. So unless someone is there to hold them accountable, nobody will hold them accountable.
Well said. Well, Larry, we don't agree on everything, but like I said, I want people to hear different voices and to hear how people think about these issues as well. Where can people find you on socials?
I hope that we at least agree on our desired outcome. I hope that's true. I hope we agree that we want the people who need help to get more help, that we want people to have better health care, that we want people to have better education. I get that we don't agree on how to get there. I get that. But I hope we do agree on the outcome that we want. That's the outcome that I want. I do want that outcome. And I think that my answer is obviously I believe my answer is a better answer. I wouldn't be saying it. So if you want to see what I'm doing, it's LarrySharpe.com or go to Larry Sharpe on all of the things. I'm on everything from Twitter to TikTok to YouTube to everything. Just Larry Sharpe, and it's Larry Sharpe with an E. And the E stands for encouraging. I like that.
All right, Larry, thank you so much for coming on.
I appreciate it. Thanks for having me.
Bye. Okay, guys, I told you guys, you need to hear from different people. We need to have different voices on this show, even if we don't agree on all of the issues. I do want to go ahead and shout out patrons really quick. Let me go ahead and cue that bad boy up. Let's do the thing. Oh, why did I leave it stuck on newbies? Whoopsie. Not the first screen. Shout out to everyone who is a Sabby patron. Thank you guys so much for your support. If you're interested in being a Sabby patron, I have 5 categories: members, Sabbies, Sabsters, Sabinators, and of course, the ultimate. All of their names are listed here. They're also scrolling across the bottom of the screen on the ticker there. And I do want to give a quick shout out to new Sabby patrons. Shout out to, I think I said Larry already, but Larry, you're still here. So here we go. Shout out to Larry Adames, Hassan, and Rose Isaac. Whoop, whoop. Thank you guys so much. Really appreciate your help. So Please drop a like for Sabby. She does the work. Oh, thank you, Bad Cookies. Yes, go ahead and hit that like button, guys. That really does help me with the algorithm. Whoop, whoop. Okay, I'm going to get to some of the comments, and then we're going to get into the other stories that we're going to talk about tonight. Extra Bulla was in the house. Eric Adams is just another cog in the New York political machine. He has orders from upon high. I hear you there, Extra Bulla. Nick, Socialist MMA is here. Where does the money go then, Larry Sharpe, if you want to decrease police budgets? Oh, Nick, I knew. I said, if Nick watching, he's really going to chime in on this one. Shout out to Coup Save America for the super chat. Damn, I just ended my own show and I missed my Sabby Sabs. Well, welcome. Welcome. JB also in the chat. We're paying for the military budget. Taxes aren't the problem. It's our priorities are the problem. Well put, JB. Thank you for the super chat, AJF. Oh, God, I'd go off on your guess. That effing point on how are we going to pay for it? BS is a bad faith point. And thank you for this super chat as well, AJF. Don't talk to me about costs when people like Larry never bring up that point when it comes to increasing the budget costs of the military. BS that. Thank you that as well. And thank you for the super chat too. How are we going to pay for that? I reply, change our effing priorities. Thank you for the super chat, Jay the Informant. Government program working perfect for illegals. Yikes, Jay. And thank you for the super chat as well, Jay. Illegals in New York get hotel rooms, funds, and jobs. Wow, I didn't realize that. Thank you for the super chat, Roger Meadows. Questions from a regular indie New Yorker on Rockfin, Sabby. Oh, sorry. I just saw that, Roger. Gah. Sorry. I'll get to those in a second. Tim says, Sabs, you're always doing a phenomenal job of bringing interesting folks on. Keep on doing a bomb job. Thank you so much. Yeah, I hope you guys want to hear from different people. Oh, shoot. I just saw all these comments in the private chat from Eric. I'm sorry, Eric. I don't know. I don't like to keep people in an echo chamber. I also think it's kind of boring if you just bring on people who think exactly like you do. So yeah. Notori says, thank you, Sab, for bringing on different voices. I don't agree with him on everything, but it was pretty interesting. And thank you for the super sticker, JM. So let's go ahead and get those comments on Rockfin, Eric. We'll go to those. Sorry, Roger Meadows. Okay, thank you for the tip on Rockfin, Roger. Larry, New Yorker here. I like that you are for growing co-ops for collective bargaining rights using nuclear power to fight climate change. However, the New York Health Act, seeing it cut property taxes, would not cost us more. It would cost us less because you are getting the profit motive of raising deductibles and copays and other hidden costs out of the system. I completely reject that it costs too much. And thank you for this comment, this tip here as well, Roger. A public bank is perfect for creating a surplus without having to raise or create new taxes, just like the Bank of North Dakota has been doing since 1919. It takes tax deposits and do what banks do, which is create money by marking up tax deposits, then issues lines of credit to finance infrastructure projects, creating public jobs, generate tax revenue that gets redeposited while low interest goes building surpluses. Thank you for that, Roger. Okay, let's get into the stories that we have tonight. Doop-a-doop, doop, doop, doop. Doop-a-doop, doop-a-doop. Okay, tonight we are discussing, Joe Rogan and Aaron Rodgers truths. Yes, Joe Rogan interviewed Aaron Rodgers. They talked about a number of issues, but there's one in particular that I do want to focus on. I'm also going to discuss Ayanna Pressley wealth gap. We are going to debunk that here tonight, ladies and gentlemen. I'm getting really tired of people telling everyone this lie. And we're also going to talk about Germany energy crisis. We're going to touch on that story tonight. And of course, Larry Sharpe was just here. Okay, let's go ahead and get started with our first story here. Okay, so we are still on this conversation here of canceling student loan debt. And I talked about this in RBN, but there's been more information that's come out, and I do want to make sure I talk about it on here as well. There is this line that's going around saying that canceling student loan debt will close the racial wealth gap. That is not true. Now, Ayanna Pressley here, again, she was in my district when she ran. I heavily supported Ayanna Pressley. I can't believe she's using this talking point now as well. She was recently interviewed. Shout out to Case Study QB for this clip. Listen to what she says about Biden canceling a portion of student loan debt. Listen to this.
Congresswoman Ayanna Pressley joins me now. She represents the 7th Congressional District in Massachusetts, which covers most of the Boston area. She's a member of the House Financial Services Committee. Congresswoman Pressley, good to see you this morning. Thank you for being with us. Having fought so hard for this, having seen the result, and now having seen the various embraces and criticisms of it, what's the way in which you present this to somebody?
Sure. Look, obviously, we would have loved to have been more ambitious in this. We want to advance policies and responses to the everyday struggles and needs of people that go as far and as deep as the hurt. That being said, our work is not done. The fight is not done. And for us to get us to invest in higher education as the public good that it is, with HBCUs and Pell Grants, tuition-free community college, and stabilizing other costs in people's lives.
Hold on to that HBCU part, because I'm going to show you something about that in a second.
And we cannot give short shrift to the real, meaningful, transformative relief that 43 million people will feel, disproportionately Black borrowers.
Let me talk about that for a second, because you and I have often talked about this, the historic inequalities, wealth inequalities between Black Americans and others. So
let's just pay attention here. They're about to go into the wealth inequality. Pay close attention to this.
To Andre Perry yesterday from Brookings. Here's a little of what he told me about this.
In terms of closing racial gaps, $10,000 of relief is negligible on closing the gap. $20,000 does a little damage. My colleague Carl Romer and I found that the more debt you eliminate, the more you close the racial wealth gap.
That is false. And I don't know why people are saying this. I really do not know why. Here's what you have to understand. When we talk about closing the racial wealth gap, the majority of African Americans do not have student loan debt. I'm going to say this one more time because people seem to think I don't know. I hope this is not a surprise to a lot of people. But the majority of African Americans do not have student loan debt. The majority of African Americans are not attending college. The majority of African Americans after high school, and sometimes even during high school, they're working their asses off. Let me explain this again. I don't know why people are thinking this. The majority of African Americans do not attend college. Therefore, the majority of African Americans do not have student loans. If I were to take you back to my grandma's neighborhood in Baltimore, do you think anyone in my grandma's neighborhood went to college? No. Do you see what I'm saying? People keep saying this. Now let's go on, because Ayanna's going to echo this same sentiment. Hit that like button, guys. Let's keep it going here.
But so by capping it at 125,000, what you're essentially doing is missing the many middle income and upper middle income people of color and women who are making high incomes and did everything they were told to do in terms of getting an education, but they have significantly less wealth.
Now, I know you share some of that view, and this wasn't your policy, and had it been your policy, it probably the numbers would have been higher. But how do you process that criticism?
It's important to remember where we started here. 2 years ago, this was an issue that people attempted to treat as fringe and to marginalize who was impacted by this nearly $2 trillion crisis. There was a false mischaracterization that this would be regressive in impact, only benefiting white graduate students who went to affluent universities. In 2 years, we have moved this in the national discourse to a response by the Biden administration to the coalition of voters that elected him. And mitigating the hurt that people are experiencing in the midst of a pandemic-induced recession and still feeling the effects of inflation. Black Americans have historically been locked out of federal relief programs, from the Homestead Act to the GI Bill to the New Deal. Today,
So she's right about this part. But wait for it.
It's the 59th anniversary of the March on Washington for Jobs and Freedom, a march for economic justice. This is an important step in the right direction. Black borrowers disproportionately are Pell Grant recipients. 1 in 4 Black borrowers will have their debt zeroed out. And I also just want to say this. I'm not using the term forgiveness because debtors have done nothing wrong. We've been told we live in a meritocracy. Education is the equalizer. In that meritocracy, higher education was supposed to close the racial wealth gap. It has only exacerbated. And that's why we've seen the HBCU presidents using ARPA funds to cancel student debt. That's why in 2 years, we've been able to build a coalition to include civil rights organizations like the NAACP and educators and grassroots organizers and organized labor. So this movement has grown because people shared their stories. And again, we held the administration accountable to a promise made on the campaign trail, and they have been responsive to that movement we grew over the last 2 years.
One of the things that she said there was that higher education was supposed to close the racial wealth gap. I disagree with that as well. How can that be the case if you don't have every African American being given the opportunity to go to college? How is it that, I don't know where people thought this from, but how is it that higher education was supposed to close the racial wealth gap when the majority of African Americans are not attending college? You guys see the problem? If we really want to talk about wages here, I think it's important to note that even if you do have a college degree, does that mean that you're going to be offered the same salary as your white peers? Not necessarily. So, well, what are we really talking about here? This don't really, I'm sorry. I wish more people would call this out. This is why it's important to listen to Black commentators. And some people are not going to like to hear this. But the one thing that will close the racial wealth gap is to give reparations to descendants of slavery in this country. And not just under slavery, not just for slavery, but because of Jim Crow too. That's actually how you would close the racial wealth gap, not by canceling student loans. Now, I want to make this very clear because I talked about this on Twitter and some people got all in their feelings. But I'm sorry. Am I for canceling student loan debt? Yes, I think all of it should have been canceled, which is what he promised, by the way. I'm going to get into that too in a second. But do I think that it will close the racial wealth gap? Hell no, I know it won't. And I'm going to show you the research that shows you that it won't. So why we got this talking point? Why are people saying this? Now, I told you guys that 10K to 20K, that's not enough. If you're like me and you went to grad school, this ain't really do that much. Just keep it real. This also does not include the other loans that people have taken out that are not federal loans. A lot of people have taken out private student loans because the federal loans, there's a certain max that you get each year. There's a limit, right? Well, if all of your financial needs are not met under the federal student loans, this is when people will turn to the private student loans, like the private lenders, like Sallie Mae does private loans, things like that. So if you have federal student loans and you have private student loans, this really ain't helping you either. Could have canceled all of it. And you know who else tends to agree when it comes to the amount? The president of the NAACP. Here's what he said. Now, this is Derek Johnson, and he tweeted this August 23rd. If student debt repayments can be paused over and over and over again, there's no reason why the president cannot cancel a minimum of $50,000. And let's remember as well, that actually was the amount that Elizabeth Warren and Chuck Schumer were asking for. They were asking for $50,000. Remember that? He goes on, he points out some good points here, and he reminded me of this. Again, this is the president of the NAACP. He tweeted, just circling back on this campaign promise. Now, again, this is from Joe Biden and Kamala Harris's campaign site. Forgive all undergrad tuition-related federal student debt from 2- and 4-year public colleges and universities and private HBCUs and MSIs for debt holders earning up to $125,000. You notice this here? Forgive all, not 10,000, not 20,000. And some people have forgotten about this. Some people have forgotten that they made that promise that they would get rid of all of it. That's their website, not mine. Now, we're going to go on because there's more here. Even Al Sharpton of all people, even he's going to come in and say it's not enough. Again, shout out here to Case Study QB. Again, he's always doing the damn thing. Listen to what he had to say here.
And Rev, you look at a couple of things that have passed or that the president has signed. The student loan relief, 54% approved, 46% disapproved. The Inflation Reduction Act, 55% approved, 45% disapproved. I have serious concerns with how the student debt relief bill was put together. Our act was put together for, my God, 1,000 reasons, none of which have anything to do with helping people out that are in a crunch. But I mean, we still have predatory lending. We still have colleges that are hiking tuition rates at grotesque rates, and they have been for the past 20 years. You know, for my education, I think undergrad, I paid $500 a semester and paid for law school $1,000 a semester. It's just grotesque how much these colleges are spending. I really would have preferred, for as big of a problem as this is, to have a more sweeping, a more global solution to this, because right now, only thing you're doing is pouring, seems to me, pouring more gas onto the fire and just telling colleges, yeah, go ahead and hike your tuition up another 300% over the next 15, 20 years.
Mm-hmm. But it's interesting that he's admitting that now, because when Bernie Sanders was on Morning Joe, when they interviewed him when he was running in 2020, Bernie Sanders was heavily pushing free public universities. Remember? See, this is the thing I want people to remember. Now, all of a sudden, all of these commentators like Morning Joe, now they want to admit, hey, there's a problem here with these universities charging these kids all this money. Hey, a lot of these kids are in a lot of debt. Something needs to be fixed. But they knew about this issue during the 2020 campaigns. They knew about it. They were told about it on their show. And what did they do? They pushed back and they smeared Bernie Sanders. They said he was too far left. They said he was radical. How dare he ask for these radical things? But now they admit to it. You see what it really was about? It really wasn't even about like the issues. They just didn't want him in. You see what I mean? Let's all remember, flashback. Now listen to what Al Sharpton has to say.
I think we can't underestimate the fact that 43 million Americans, young people and some older that wanted to do the right thing, couldn't afford it, but went into college anyway and built up this debt that has in many cases strangled them for decades. So they're the victims of their own good choice. And I think that what President Biden and has proposed here is good. But at the same time, I have to agree with you, we need a global solution to deal with the escalating and unfair rates that these colleges are getting away with, the predators that have exploited this, and to put Novocaine into a situation to stop the pain on 43 million. You still have to go and get the root cavity out of the problem, which we haven't done, because the Novocaine will wear off. And you
didn't we talk about this in 2020? Wasn't this on several TV shows during 2020? Didn't Bernie Sanders talk about this on The View, on Morning Joe, on CNN? And they said, this is too much. This socialism is scary. Now, all of a sudden, it's okay to admit it. Do you see how the narrative works? They have the same talking points that come from the State Department. They have the same talking points that come from the U.S. government, that come from the White House. They echo what the White House is saying. This is what they do.
We'll still have people getting into debt if you don't deal with all of the surrounding issues here. So I agree with you in the long run, but I'm very happy to see that there's been some relief for some people that have been struggling for decades with bad credit, couldn't buy homes, couldn't build their wealth, had bad credit scores, only because they wanted to do the right thing with their lives. We preach to people, don't do things that are street life in many of our communities. Don't take bad choices. Go to school, be somebody. They did, and they ended up in debt. And I think there was a way we needed to relieve it.
That's the exact same thing that Bernie Sanders was telling them. It's okay for Al to admit it now. See how this works? Wasn't okay for them to admit it and agree with him, with Bernie Sanders when he was running, because their job was to smear him and prevent him from trying to get in. A lot of hypocrisy. Now, I told you before, in reference to these so-called, let me go to this one first. This closing the racial wealth gap thing. Now, this is from Sandy Darity. Sandy Darity is a professor at Duke University. His real name is William Darity, but he goes by Sandy. And he has done the research on this for a long time. This is not something that is new. He wrote a book, too, that you need to read as well. It's called From Here to Equality. Definitely check that out, where he talks about the need for reparations. But it is this point here, and I'm going to go all the way down to this segment here, because I know where this line is at. This piece right here, people need to pay very close attention to. Here we go. Whoops, I highlighted the whole thing. Just this paragraph here. At present, my calculations based upon the Fed's data indicate that Black American descendants of persons enslaved in the United States constitute about 12% of the nation's population, but own less than 2% of the nation's wealth. These figures indicate why policies, listen to this, like forgiving all student debt and providing universal baby bonds to the entire population won't nearly be enough. These programs are worthwhile and I support them. So for the shit libs that's going to come at me, he says he does support those programs. Now let's go back in. In fact, I helped design an early baby bonds proposal. While these approaches can do good to help both the poor and the middle class, listen up, folks. They won't close the Black-white wealth gap. And he explains why right about here. Let me make it bigger. I think this font's a little small. Okay. First, consider student debt. Black Americans would gain disproportionately from student loan debt relief because they have larger average levels of higher education debt. 23,400 compared to 16,000 for white students. After accounting for the higher enrollment rate of white students, erasing student debt would result in an average Black gain in wealth of $8,424 and a white gain of $6,560. This translates into a reduction in the racial wealth gap of less than $1,900. Do you guys see that? It would reduce the median gap of 54,700 by 3% and the mean gap of $300,000 by less than 1%. This is it doesn't close the racial wealth gap. See the problem? And this goes on. Eric, feel free to share this link to this in the comments section, because he goes on to talk about why baby bonds wouldn't close the racial wealth gap either. This piece right here. Whoopsie. Here we go. In short, the notion that either student debt forgiveness or baby bonds taken separately or in combination will erase the racial wealth gap would be sheer mystification. Both policies are desirable for a number of reasons, but making extravagant claims about their impact on Black-white differences in net worth is disingenuous. That's right, public domain. It's called math. You see the problem? If you're just tuning in, I'll echo this again. The majority of African Americans don't have student loan debt because the majority of African Americans do not attend college. The majority of African Americans after high school are working their asses off. Sorry, but that's just the reality. So let me move this over here. Again, that is from Sandy Darity. Guys, you need to follow. If you don't follow him on Twitter, follow him on social media. Check out his book. Again, he's done a lot of research on this, especially when it comes to reparations. Marianne Williamson actually worked with Sandy Darity on what would be the best reparations plan for her campaign when she ran for president. So Marianne Williamson knows this too. I don't know why people don't seem to want to say the R word, but what Ayanna Pressley should say is that what would really close the racial wealth gap is reparations. But apparently that's a scary word and you're not allowed to say it. Thank you for sharing that, Eric. Thanks so much. Now, I do have to say this. I do remember Joe Biden making some pretty significant statements when it came to what he would cancel for student loans. And I had to remind myself, maybe, I just imagined that. Maybe I misheard. Apparently, I did not. And here's the video to prove it. We're about to fact check this bad boy in just a second. Let's all remember what he said.
President Biden is considering plans to forgive some student loan debt, but some activists say the proposals he's looking at now don't measure up to the promises he made on the campaign trail. One viral tweet reads, quote, Biden ran on canceling all your federal student debt if you went to an HBCU or public college and make under $125,000.
Yeah, I don't hear many people mentioning that. What happened to that promise that Joe Biden made to students that went to historically Black colleges and universities that he would cancel all of their student loan debt if they were under that 125 figure there? What happened to that? See, I bring this up and a lot of people are like, oh yeah, I forgot he said that. I didn't forget. Let's go on. There's more.
Let's verify. When he was running for president, did Joe Biden propose forgiving all federal student debt for borrowers who attended public or historically black colleges and have annual incomes below $125,000? Our sources, a post on Medium by then candidate Biden, the Democratic Party, and video from a town hall held in Miami a month before the election. In April of 2020, Biden wrote a blog post about his ideas for helping out folks struggling in the pandemic economy. One of those ideas, quote, I propose to forgive all undergraduate tuition-related federal student debt from 2- and 4-year public colleges for debt holders earning up to $125,000. He said this would also apply to HBCUs and MSIs, minority-serving institutions. The same language appeared in the official Democratic Party platform, which was approved at the 2020 Democratic National Convention. And then, during an NBC town hall in October of 2020, Biden referenced a version of the same plan when answering a question about the economic obstacles facing young people.
That's why I'm going to eliminate a lot of your student debt if you, in fact, if you come from a family less than 125 grand and you went to a public university.
So we can verify, yes, when he was running for president, Joe Biden proposed forgiving all federal student debt for borrowers who attended public or historically black colleges and have annual incomes below $125,000. With your Verify, I'm Casey Decker.
Thanks, Casey. Just wanted to jog your memory there. So I had to check with myself too. I'm like, am I imagining this? But I could have sworn he made this this statement here. So that's that. That answers that question. I'm gonna go to some of the comments here. Roman says, where is this $10,000 house I can sign up for? I'm trying to figure that out too, Roman. I don't know, Roman. And by the way, that's not even enough for a down payment on a house here. So just letting you know. Chris says canceling student debt won't close the racial wealth gap. Reparations will. Exactly, Chris. Thank you so much for the super sticker, Aberdeen71. Juliet says, thank you for supporting reparations for descendants of slavery. You are welcome, Juliet. Of course. Angry Lefty says, sorry, we can't give you reparations. That money needs to go to Ukraine. What? Angry Lefty coming in with the right hook. That was pretty good, Angry Lefty. That actually might be the comment. Let's keep that one there, Eric. I think that might be the comment of the night so far. That might be the one. There's something going on in Germany, and I wanted to talk about this because who knows, at some point this could affect us too, right? Global issues are domestic issues. A lot of times we're the ones to blame for some of these global issues. Germany actually is going through an energy crisis, and I want to get into this. Let me go ahead and pull this up here. Germany's natural gas shortage is 80% full, and the country will reach its October target early, officials say. Let's go ahead and get into this here. Germany's natural gas storage has reached 80%, and the nation is on track to meet its October storage targets early, according to a German official. That's a major win for Germany, which was highly dependent on Russian gas prior to the invasion in Ukraine. The country previously sourced 32% of its liquefied natural gas from Russia, according to Reuters, and has been slammed amid supply cuts to the Nord Stream 1 pipeline, which is currently flowing at 20% capacity. Let me make this a little bit big. Okay. Boop. But the country is finding success in weaning itself off of Russian LNG. Economy Minister Robert Habeck said to Bloomberg in an email, and the nation will be on track to meet its October target of 85% gas storage early next month. Reserves are currently at 82% as of Monday, according to the Federal Network Agency. Now listen to this. It's a very challenging situation, and big savings are definitely still needed, but we are prepared as a country. That's coming from Habeck. noting that gas companies would be able to access the storage this winter, particularly if Russia strikes Europe with a total gas cutoff. Now, why are we talking about this? I don't know if you guys are aware, but the UK, I talked to my friend in the UK recently, and he was telling me that they don't know if they're going to have heat this winter. Again, going back to the energy, all of this is all connected. Fuel, gas, energy crisis, it's all connected, right? So we're going to keep an eye on Germany. Like they're saying this now, this is as of recent, that they should be okay. But a couple of days ago, this is not what they were saying. So I am going to keep an eye on Germany. Let's go back in. Russia is already planning a surprise 3-day shutdown of Europe's main gas line starting this Wednesday. But Habak thinks Germany's gas storage will have reached the 85% target by then. But it isn't a victory for Europe just yet. The International Energy Agency has said collective storage for the entire European Union would need to reach 90% in order to ensure a safe winter. And EU storage was only at 67% at the beginning of the month. That's according to the most recent data from Energy Monitor. So this is important to know, even though Germany's saying, yeah, I think we're going to be on target. They're actually telling us here that the entire EU needs to not reach 90% in order to ensure a safe winter. Did I say not? No, I was right. Sorry. The entire EU needs to reach 90% in order to ensure a safe winter. So it's not just about Germany. That's the thing. So just because Germany may be doing okay, you still kind of need everybody else to be on. Everyone else needs to be doing well too. And it sounds like that's not necessarily what's happening. So listen here. It goes on to say, again, the EU storage was only at 67% at the beginning of the month. So they still have a ways to go. Let's go down here. Even if the EU reaches the 90% target, countries will likely face increased risk of supply disruptions in the event of a total cutoff from Russian gas. Now that's coming from the IEA. So I told you guys, I spoke with my friend that lives in UK, and that's what he was saying, that he's like, yeah, they're telling us they don't even know if we're going to have heat for the winter. Rationing will still be necessary, right? Like, I lived in Germany. It gets cold in the winter. It's not as cold as, Canada, but you still need heat. And I want us to start thinking too, like, how is this going to affect us? I want us to not have this idea that if something is happening abroad, it doesn't concern us. That's not true. I don't want us to feel that way. I don't want us to ever really think that way. I want us to look at these issues, these global issues, as domestic issues. So I'm going to keep a close eye on this. And then I also want to show you this pipeline so you can see what this looks like. Now, I brought this up I think this was months ago, the first time I talked about the Nord Stream 2. So this is actually the route map of Russia's gas pipeline and what Germany's sanctions over Ukraine mean. And this is what I want to show you here. Oh, Boris, this is back in the day. You gone now. Bye. Okay, this map here. What is the Nord Stream 2 gas pipeline? Nord Stream 2 is a 1,200 kilometer gas pipeline that runs under the Baltic Sea from Russian coast near St. Petersburg to Lummin in Germany. It runs parallel to the Nord Stream, which has been operational since 2011. The pipeline was completed in September 2021 and cost around $8.4 billion to build, but it's not yet running. This was the pipeline that I showed everyone last year. I'll see if I can make it a little bit larger. I don't know how much. Is that bigger? Oh, now you can't see it. Okay, here we go. This green line here, you'll see that it goes from all the way over here from Russia all the way over to Germany right here. And I know I talked about this on this show before months ago, but I just wanted to remind everyone again about that line so you can see where it comes from and where it goes. Okay. What's that, Darth? In the UK so far, the government don't care. They're on holiday or busy showcasing their CVs to give a shit. Love your work, Sabs. Oh, wow. That's interesting, Darth. Thanks so much for that. Yeah, it's scary. I don't know. Like I said, this could affect us too. But there's that Nord Stream 2. And in fact, I think I shared this exact same article last time when I talked about this. So it says between them, Nord Stream and Nord Stream 2 have the ability to transport 110 billion cubic meters of gas from Russia to Europe every year, representing more than a quarter of all gas used by EU companies. So why is it controversial? Let's just remind ourselves of this again, too. While Russia and Germany have been keen on the second underwater pipeline, the UK and the US both oppose it, as do Ukraine and Poland. Nord Stream 2 has been criticized for giving Russia too much control over European gas supply, potentially giving Russia the power to shut off large amounts of a nation's gas for political reasons, as it did in Ukraine in 2006. I actually would suggest looking into that too, because there could be more to that story. Germany was yet to approve it and use it as regulator objects to Gazprom's 50% stake over similar concerns of Russian dominance. It is calling for another company to be granted ownership. And then this is the part where they bring in Joe Biden. U.S. President Joe Biden had previously pledged to shut down the project should Russia invade, and has placed sanctions on Russian businesses connected to it. So again, this is the same article I showed a couple of months ago. This came out February 22nd. So I just wanted to remind you where this comes from. So that's very important. So we're going to keep an eye on that, guys. And we're going to just see what happens in Europe in reference to energy and heat for them this winter. So I will definitely be following that. And it helps. I know people over there, but I'm going to be paying close attention to that because we need to know if people are freezing. I'm sorry, but we should know about that. I'm going to go to some of the comments here. JB says, yep, I tweeted about that. We can give money to Ukraine, but not cancel all student loan debt for HBCU students. I call BS. That's right. Ray C says it's manufactured crisis. They are refusing to pay in rubles. Hope that's right. Rubles. And it's being reported as Russia is cutting them off. Thank you for that, Ray. Thank you. Gamer says Nord pipeline is huge. Yeah, I know, right? That's a pretty big pipeline. Still have it open over here. So that was like, that is interesting. See, Brass, the left in Germany will have icicles hanging from their noses saying Trump and Putin did it. No, man, I'm telling you, listen, it is not fun to not have heat. I've been without heat. It is not fun. I don't know, man. You can put on a lot of clothes and still be cold. I do want to get into, let me answer this question. Sorry. Whoopies. From Yano Mommy. Sabby Sabs, don't you think it's possible reparations could divide people along racial lines? People are already divided along racial lines. Like, this isn't, new. And also, you have to keep in mind that reparations, that's a debt that's owed. It's not like one day Black people just woke up and said, hey, we want you to give us money and these systemic changes and fix the system. That's not how it happened. We were supposed to get 40 acres and a mule. Now, that goes back to the General Sherman promise that he made when slaves were freed. That never happened. That's why our net worth tends to be less than our white peers, because land is valuable. And I want to explain the difference really quick between net worth and income, because they're not the same thing. Your income is what you actually earn. It's your salary. It's your hourly pay, right? Net worth is what you own minus what you owe. So the problem that has happened with a lot of the African Americans in the United States that are descendants of slavery, we don't own much. It's just a reality. How many of us own land? We didn't get the 40 acres and a mule. That's the problem. That's the problem. Terry said, give my family their land back. Here you go. There you go. So again, and I see some people in the comments trying to say, well, what about this person? What about that person? Again, reparations is a debt that is owed. I recommend that people, again, read Sandy Darity's book, From Here to Equality, and you'll understand why. And it's not just about slavery. It's also about Jim Crow and the effects that had on African Americans as well. Let's see. Joe Rogan. Okay, let's go ahead and get into this. Now, there were other things that I wanted to show from this interview. Unfortunately, the full interview is on Spotify, and I don't think I can play it on here because Eric mentioned this to me earlier that he thinks it may be copyright on Spotify. So that sucks, because there were 3 other issues that they talked about that I did want to touch on. And one of them was about the police. And one of them was about, what's the other one? Legalizing marijuana. So those 2 were important as well. I can just tell you what they said, but I don't think I can play the Spotify clip on here. But this was another issue that I was going to talk about as well. And this came from Sean Frasick. He said, how many thousands of small businesses closed and never reopened again? So in this discussion, Joe Rogan and Aaron Rodgers, they're talking about what happened to those of us that live in these states that were locked down. And I live in Massachusetts. My state was locked down. And they're going to bring up the issue that happened with some of these businesses. And I think, look, whether you agree with the lockdowns or not, this is something I think everybody needs to hear, especially if you lived in a state that was not locked down at all. Because my parents were in South Carolina. They did not experience this at all. So to them, like, if they were coming up here to visit me, it was like going to another country. So let's go ahead and listen to what they say. This is important.
I'll tell you what gets me, and I don't, really want to dwell too much on the COVID stuff anymore. But one thing that really sticks with me when you're talking about things that the government could do to make people's lives better is, I'm 38. People that, around my age, I grew up with, went to high school with, college with, a lot of them are in that age group now where people are starting their own business. They've worked in corporate, maybe they've figured out exactly what they want to do. They start their own small business, and small business is the backbone of America, right? And how many thousands and thousands and thousands of small businesses closed and never opened again? Restaurants, bars, establishments like that, because of COVID, right? And safety, started as 2 weeks to flatten the curve and then went to lockdowns.
Yeah.
In places like Chico, California, where I'm from, where there were multiple stretches of time where there were 0 cases in the entire city of 80,000, or hardly any, less than 100. And you got small businesses in a small town, college town, that could not open their doors. And many of these establishments that I went to in high school and college and going back and visiting never opened again.
Yeah, some of my favorite restaurants in LA are gone. I think at one point in time, LA had lost 75% of its restaurants, which is insane.
It's insanity.
It's so hard to run a restaurant already, And
so what are they going to do for those people?
Yeah, what? Nothing.
Nothing.
Yeah, nothing. And no accountability. No accountability for these decisions that show there was no science.
But John
behind
Hopkins comes out with a study talking about these lockdowns did more detriment than good.
Yeah.
And they're not the only, research place that's done these type of studies, but are they going to go back and reverse it? And they say, oh, tough shit, sorry. Because I think on one level, it's really one of two extremes, right? Either they really thought they were doing the right thing, or there's some coordinated plan. Maybe it's somewhere in the middle.
I don't think there's a coordinated plan. I think people were trying.
I'm just saying what people think, right?
So this is an interesting discussion, and I wish more people who lived in those states like I did that went through this, those of you that lived in California, if you're here in Massachusetts, I want to hear from you about what it was like for you, like what the experience was like, especially like financially. Do you know someone that owned a small business during this time? Maybe it was you. I don't know. But I can tell you here in Boston, a lot of small businesses closed. First, we would receive these notifications that they were closing for the time being because we were locked down. Then you would get another notification saying that they had closed permanently. So when we were shut down like that here, that was not good for small businesses. Companies like Target and Walmart, they're able to bounce back. Like shutting them down for like 2 or 3 months doesn't hurt them the way that it would hurt your mom and pop hardware store or your mom and pop restaurant. That really hurt them. And then when the summer came around and they told us that we could eat outside, if you were one of those mom and pop restaurants in the city, most likely you didn't have outdoor space. So then what they had decided to do was let's put tables and chairs on the sidewalk. Well, now there's fire code issues, right? So you had to be careful. And then you could put 2 tables outside, and then it's like the 2 tables, but they got to be like 6 feet apart. And then now you're in someone else's space, the store right next to you. So now you're crossing their line, right? So then the city, I felt like, found a way to become greedy with it and started to basically punish the small businesses that did not have that space available, the outdoor space, and tried to make them pay like some type of fine to be able to let people eat outside their own restaurant, because technically now you're on the city's property. And it was really disgusting to me to see how the city was trying to find a way to profit off of the despair that those small businesses and those small business owners were dealing with at that time. That was disgusting. There was a lot of pushback towards Mayor Wu. She wanted to specifically charge the small restaurants in the North End, which is that's where a lot of the Italian restaurants are here. It's not an Italian neighborhood anymore. It's been gentrified, but she wanted them to pay a fee. Like, I think it was like $7,500 for them to allow people to sit outside and eat outside their restaurant. And she tried to make the excuse, this is local news, by the way. She tried to make the excuse that, well, it creates more rodents, and as if we didn't already have, like, come on, we didn't already have a rodent problem here. Let's be real. And then she tried to say that, well, it requires more street sweeping. And so we need that money so that the city can come in and clean up more. No, the taxes that people are paying in the city, that is already supposed to cover street cleaning. So why do you need these restaurants to pay $7,500 a month? You have to keep in mind, they had just reopened. They had been closed for months. And this is what you hit them with. So shout out to those restaurant owners because they went to Michelle Wu's office and they complained. They went to the media and they complained. And that is what you should do. That's the difference when you have the local politicians that you actually have a chance of actually confronting. You can get access to them a little bit differently than these politicians that you vote to put in DC. That is the difference. She was really they were trying to make a profit during a time like that. And of course, did they have $7,500 to give them? No, they had just reopened. So I want to show this again, and I'm going to chime in here because there's some interesting points that he made here.
I'll tell you what gets me, and I don't, really want to dwell too much on the COVID stuff anymore. But one thing that really sticks with me when you're talking about things that the government could do to make people's lives better is, I'm 38. People that, around my age, I grew up with, went to high school with, college with, a lot of them are in that age group now where people are starting their own business. They've worked in corporate, maybe they figure out exactly what they do. They start their own small business, and small business is the backbone of America, right? And how many thousands and thousands and thousands of small businesses closed and never opened again? Restaurants, bars, establishments like that because of COVID, right? And safety, started as 2 weeks to flatten the curve and then went to lockdowns in places like Chico, California, where I'm from, where there were multiple stretches of time where there were 0 cases in the entire city of 80,000 or hardly any, less.
I just want to chime in here for a second. In reference to those businesses that were able to reopen, I want you to think about all the businesses that were not able to reopen. The ones that just had to tap out. They were like, we can't afford it because we haven't been able to make any money for like 2 to 3 months. And I want to tell you the businesses here that were in Black neighborhoods, particularly in Boston, the Black businesses were the ones who were hit the hardest by this. Where was the relief from the city to help out those mom and pop businesses? They really did not think this through. They really didn't. And even if you go to some of the tourist areas here in Boston, you just trot your little self down Boylston Street, you'll see a lot of those places have closed too. McGreevy's, Poorhouse, I believe Lear was one of them. I had a list of them one time where I think it was like an email chain. And it was a list of all the restaurants in Boston that had closed permanently because of it.
Less than 100. And you got small businesses in a small town, college town, that could not open their doors. And many of these establishments that I went to in high school and college and going back and visiting never opened again.
Yeah, some of my favorite restaurants in LA are gone. I think at one point in time, LA had lost 75% of its restaurants.
75%.
Which is insane.
It's insanity.
It's so hard to run a restaurant already.
And so what are they going to do for those people?
Yeah, what? Nothing.
Nothing.
Yeah, nothing, and no accountability. No accountability for these decisions that show there was no science.
John Hopkins comes out with a study talking about these lockdowns did more detriment than good.
Yeah,
and they're not the only research place that's done these type of studies. But are they going to go back and reverse it? And they say, oh, tough shit. Sorry.
Right. What did they do for those businesses like after the fact? Because I can tell you, like, restaurants are probably the hardest business to start. I think 99% of restaurants fail. It's not an easy business. It's very tough. Even famous people have had restaurants fail. Like, it's just want to be real. I'm sorry. But it's difficult to start a restaurant in the first place. And let's say you are a part of that small percentage that makes it. Your restaurant is actually making a profit. Great. Now you went through all of that. You got through the first hurdle. Then this happens. You have to close your doors for who knows however many months, because that was the decision that Governor Baker and people like Mayor Wu decided to make. So you do that. hoping that this is probably only going to be like 2 weeks or so. We can weather the storm. It turns into a longer time. Then the summer comes around and they say, we're going to let you guys reopen, but you have to have people sit outside, not inside. Oh, whoopsie. We don't have outdoor space. Oh, that's okay. You can put a table or two out on the sidewalk. So now you are a mom and pop place that was probably used to getting, I don't know, maybe if you're in the tourist area, probably hundreds of customers a day. Okay. Now you can only put the tables for your restaurant in front of your restaurant. You can't put it in front of a restaurant right next to you. Boston is dense, so you have very little space. So now you're now limited to these 2 tables that you can put outside, and that's your customer base. And some people that came back after that fact and reopened still had to end up closing down their shop permanently because they were never able to get that revenue back because they didn't have the space for the customers to come in. Nobody thought about this when they made these rules, and it's very sad, very sad. So you close down shop for good, and then where do you go from there? If this is a restaurant that's been in your family for generations, I'm talking this 3rd generation that has owned this restaurant, what do you go? What do you do? Where do you go? Where you to go work for somebody else after all those years? It's terrible, terrible. And then I'll let them finish here.
Because I think on one level, it's really one of 2 extremes, right? Either they really thought they were doing the right thing, or there's some coordinated plan. Maybe it's somewhere in the middle.
I don't think there's a coordinated plan. I think people were trying.
I'm just saying what people think, right?
What do you guys think? I wanted to do this as a poll, but YouTube might flag it if I did. What do you guys think? Do you think they knew what they were doing? Or do you think what Aaron was saying here, that it was some type of coordinated plan? I don't know. I know one thing. After that, Governor Baker here announced that he's not running for governor again. I know that. Paul says it wasn't by accident. Guys, see? French wee wee says reset. Bad Cookie says, I think Aaron was right. He said it's somewhere in the middle. I agree with that. Interesting. I'll take that comment on Rockfin, Eric. Thank you so much for the tip on Rockfin, Roger. I found Roman's $10,000 house is located in 1967. Germany was an independent energy economy using nuclear power, but was pressured by environmentalists to drop it, forcing them to go back to fossil fuels, thus depending on Russia. So listening to those who are fighting to end climate change, they went from an energy independent to a dependent country, went from putting less CO2 into the environment to more. Ironic. That's interesting, Roger. Thank you so much for sharing that. And I do want to shout out these chats here. A kid says, hi, Sabby, please consider the U.S. empire has no moral ground as it is actively unwilling to help its poorest while sending resources for another war. There you go. Thank you for the super chat, AJF. Please, everyone, spread this message. Biden promised canceling it all. 10 to 20K is once a crumb thing that the Democrats have done. Yeah, guys, please share that with people. I thought I was imagining things for a minute, and then all I had to do was do a little bit of research, and I'm like, oh, there it is. He did say that. A kid says, Sabby, in August 2022, many of those small businesses and the families they support are gone, and there's no accountability by the U.S. empire. Nothing. Sebastian says, Sabby, please discuss the Great Reset. I have to do some research on that, Sebastian. Might have to get some people to come on for that too. AJF, don't let Democrats think they did something substantial. It's crumbs. Bam. Excuse me. Yeah, that's a good point. I'm sorry, but we got to remind people. Terry says liquor stores never closed either. That's true. That is true. Because technically for those, you just walk in, pick up what you need and walk out. Paul says, FYI, I'm a 65-year-old white man and I love your show. Well, thank you very much, Paul. Welcome. All are welcomed here. So that's that, guys. Like, I just want us to reflect on things a little bit more and think about how our government could have done things differently. And also how they're trying to play all of us. Look at the lies they're just telling, just so freely. As if we can't just do a quick little search. Yeah, Johnny said liquor stores did curbside pickup. Yep, at least they did here. And the breweries did that too, by the way. A kid says, please, everyone hit the like button. Yes, hit that like button, guys. If you're new, go ahead and subscribe. What are you doing? Hello. But hit that like button. That helps me with the algorithm, guys. Tomorrow is Wednesday. I'm not here on Wednesdays. I'll upload clips. I'll be back Thursday. We'll have some fun. And I won't be here Friday, and it's going to be weird, but I'll be at Camp Dada. So I'm going to do probably a couple of shorts on YouTube. You may see me pop up here and there with all the activists and stuff there. So that'll be fun. But yeah, buddy, let's do the damn thing. All right, guys, that's it for me tonight. I hope that you at least, enjoyed what Larry had to say. Like I said, we don't agree on everything. But again, I want you guys to hear different voices. I don't want you in an echo chamber. We need to hear from people that have different political labels than we do. Okay. All right, guys, that is it for tonight. Hope you have a good night. Have a good Wednesday tomorrow. I'll be back on Thursday. So you know how we do this. Have a good night. Keep up the fight.